I want to welcome everyone today. We're going to have a series of folks to make some comments, and I was elected to kick it off. I want you to stop for a minute and imagine a situation where you are told that you may be doing something wrong. There's no evidence that you're doing anything wrong. There's no proof that you're doing anything wrong, but you may be doing something wrong. Therefore, we're going to put you out of business. That's exactly what's going on here today. That's exactly what's happening here with this arrogant fish farm or fish zoo in California that's telling us what we can and can't do in our lobster fishery. The heart of the issue is that they have made a decision which is a knife in the back of the lobster industry in Maine with no evidence. The governor sent me her handwritten notes from a call that we had 2 years ago with this outfit, and we went through a long discussion. The call lasted about an hour. The last question I asked of a guy named Wilding, let's see, his first name was Sam Wilding, and at the very end of the conversation I said, Sam, is there any evidence whatsoever of a right whale entangled in Maine lobster gear or dying because of an entanglement in the Maine lobster gear? And the answer was no. Is there any evidence whatsoever? The answer was no. That's outrageous, and it's an egregiously irresponsible. There are a number of things that really bother me about this. Let me read you just from the decision. Due to a lack of information, it is often not possible to assign entanglements to a specific fishery. Just documented entanglements from 2015 to 2019 involving pot and trap gear or unidentified gear are all attributed to unknown fisheries of which the lobster fishery may be a part. May be a part. There is no information. What in the hell are these people thinking? I wrote him a letter yesterday. I said, how would you like to walk into a courtroom and have the judge say, you're guilty until you prove you're innocent? That ain't the way our system is supposed to work. That is not fundamental fairness in our society. And make no mistake, this is no joke. This isn't an abstract, this isn't a study somebody issued. These people are trying to put this industry out of business. They are telling people all over the country and the world not to buy Maine lobsters. I don't care if people do studies. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in science. They can do all the studies they want. But when they take the next step and say, no, we're going to take the step to communicate to people all over the world that you should be put out of business, don't buy this product, that's something that I think is outrageous. Now, here's one of the things that really frosts me. Can you tell that I'm a little annoyed today? Here's one of the things that really frosts me. The Maine lobster industry has done a hell of a lot over the past 10, 15 years to mitigate whatever risk there is, even though the risk hasn't been demonstrated. But here's what they said about that. Listen to this. This is in the report, page 56. Although United States and Canadian agencies have introduced measures aimed at reducing the impact and the risk posed by commercial fisheries and other human activities on the North Atlantic right whale, the effectiveness of these measures remains unproved. You get it? We got to prove that what we're doing works. They don't have to prove a damn thing. That's what I just don't get. That I've never experienced anything like this. It reminds me of Churchill. Churchill's, you probably all know the famous Churchill quote, this is supposition wrapped in an assumption inside a conjecture. There's no evidence here. Here are a couple of other things that I find particularly galling about this. As far as I've been able to determine, and I've talked to all the people that I can who are involved in this industry and involved in this process, these folks never came to Maine. They never went on a boat. They never talked to any lobstermen. They made no effort to come here and understand what they're doing to this industry. The second thing that really frosts me is that this report is 73 pages long. There is not a single word in it of remorse, regret, empathy, sympathy, understanding of what this means to this industry. We've already had 2 major retailers in the last 2 days take lobster off their list. Blue Tarp and Fresh Direct or something, mainly Fresh, I can't remember. But anyway, we've had 2 companies and there are more to come. These people wrote 73 pages. They never said, we understand that this might be difficult for Maine, but we think it's important. No! No regret whatsoever. These are arrogant, irresponsible, grossly, egregiously irresponsible decisions. So, it's not acceptable to stab Maine people in the back without any evidence. It's not responsible to try to kill a whole industry and the livelihoods of thousands of good Maine people based on conjecture, on possibility, on hunch, on assumptions. And if you read that report, that's all it is. And one thing I want to add, Olin, if you'll bring this map over, they did 2 reports when the report came out the other day. One was about Canada and one was about the U.S. They published a map in connection with the Canadian one. And what it shows is these are sightings of right whales. See where they are? See where they are? Up here in Canada, in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. They didn't publish the map for Maine. You know why? Because there are practically no sightings down here. That's intellectually dishonest. There was no map in connection with the Maine report, although they had the data for the Canadian report, but they didn't show the Maine report because it would show that it's a very, very, very low risk. I said it's intellectually dishonest. It's not intellectually dishonest. It's flat out dishonest. It's a lie. And these people should be ashamed of themselves. So we'll be talking. I'm sure you'll have questions about what are next steps. We've written them a letter. The delegation, the governor and I have written a letter to this outfit saying, quit, rethink it, look at the data. No entanglement since 2004, not a single whale death attributed to Maine gear. Look at the data and give us a more sensible decision. If they don't do that, then we have to decide what our next steps are. But this is an assault on the people of Maine without any basis whatsoever, and I find it just, well, it's the worst, most irresponsible action I've seen in all my years in public office. So, with that, here's the governor.
Wow, tough act to follow. Obviously, I share all these concerns, and there's no other way to put it. Like everyone else here, like everyone in the state of Maine, like all 4 members of the congressional delegation, I am livid at this unwise decision. This Seafood Watch group of people in Southern California, some advocacy arm of the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California.
It's a fish zoo.
Fish zoo in Southern California, who've never been to Maine, it appears, red listing our lobster and accusing our lobster industry without any evidence of being a risk to right whales. Adding insult to injury, last night the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, Judge Boasberg, sided with the National Marine Fisheries Service against Maine lobstermen as well in a lawsuit that challenges federal regulations. Regulations that are not based on sound science, not proven fact, and that will often pose a risk of devastating Maine's lobster industry. These guys are fed up. I'm fed up. We're all fed up. The price of bait, the scarcity of bait, the price of fuel, and now these 2 hits in 1 week, it's outrageous. There's no balancing here. No stopping to take a look at the economic impact of these ill-advised decisions. And it's time they came to the table and talked with us and to find out what this is all about. Maine's lobster industry is a model of sustainable harvesting practices and management. Generations of Maine lobstermen working hard to protect the sustainability of the fisheries. And Maine lobstermen have taken unprecedented steps to protect right whales, Nobody's out there looking for right whales to bump into. Steps that the federal government and this seafood watch, this, what did you call it?
Fish zoo.
A fish zoo in Southern California, completely failed to recognize, never even identified these steps we've taken for years. Our lobstermen helped develop and have complied with federal whale protections, regulations, spending tens of thousands of dollars out of their own pockets, a huge expense, to modify or outright change their gear to protect right whales. They've done this for years now. They've done things like switch from floating rope to sinking rope, put more traps on one line to reduce the number of lines in the water, increasing the risk to personal safety as well, modifying the lines to ensure that a whale that might encounter a line can swim free, placing special markings on their lines so that we know if an entanglement occurs, we can identify it. It's a Maine lobster line, it's somebody else's, it's Canadian, it's Massachusetts. They haven't taken any of those things into account. Maine lobstermen are partners in conservation and sustainability, always have been. Like all of us, they want to protect endangered species. The fact is, no right whale death has been attributed to Maine gear. And there has been not a single right whale entanglement attributed to Maine lobster gear in 18 years. Despite those facts, uncontroverted facts, the district court sided with the National Marine Fisheries Services, which puts all the burdens for right whale protection squarely on the shoulders of Maine's lobster fishery and on Maine's economy, ignoring the impact of ship strikes in the Canadian waters, whale entanglements in Canadian waters, and Canadian snow crab gear, much more prevalent and documented. Monterey Bay Aquarium, the fish zoo in Southern California, also ignored these facts and all the good work that Maine lobstermen have been doing for years when that fish zoo in Southern California issued their irresponsible red list designation. They should be ashamed of this absurd designation. They should immediately reverse it. Out-of-touch decisions like this from the federal court and designations like this from this advocacy group in Southern California with their own agenda, fundraising or whatever, that doesn't protect right whales. They simply insult thousands of hardworking lobstermen who risk their lives to put food on the table while practicing responsible stewardship and paying out of their own pockets to protect right whales. We stand here today in support of Maine's lobster industry and in partnership with the Maine Lobstermen's Association as we determine next steps to take in the courts and outside the courts. But we want to send a clear message to consumers and businesses all around the world that our lobstermen are partners and that Maine lobster can and should and will be enjoyed regardless of this ridiculous designation and this outrageous court decision.
Thank you. Now, I know you all are good reporters, and I have a suggestion. I suspect you're going to call the aquarium or the
Do we
Sea
have their
Watch.
number?
Yeah, we should give them. But I suspect you're going to call them. When you do, please ask them very straightforwardly, simple yes or no question. Do you have any evidence of of right whales being entangled or dying as a result of encounters with the Maine lobster fishery? Straightforward question. Do you have any evidence whatsoever? If you just ask them a general question, they'll give you a lot of stuff, but that's a yes or no answer. Second thing, and I should have mentioned this, the governor mentioned, we've all mentioned all the changes that have been made. Here's an interesting number. Since the teens, the Maine lobster industry has reduced rope in the water by 30,000 miles. 30,000 miles of less rope by changing the way they fish. Instead of having the lines across the top of the water, they now have one line that goes down and multiple traps on the bottom. In this report, they say, well, ropes are getting stronger. They cite a 2010 study. Well, that's not true. The Maine lobster fishery, they had point out another place, uses lighter weight rope. They put in breakaway links. They've done all these things, but of course, it doesn't matter to these folks because we can't prove it. The fact that they can't prove anything, forget it. Okay, I want to ask Kurt Brown, who is with Ready Lobster and is also, I think you're a marine biologist, aren't you?
That's correct.
He's a marine biologist, and I want him to make a few comments based upon his experience and knowledge in this field. He's even got his boots on.
A little warm. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Governor. My name is Kurt Brown. I am a lobsterman out of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, and a marine biologist at Ready Seafood Company. I think if there's one thing that everybody here today can agree on is that right whales deserve to be protected. They're majestic animals. But I'd go a step further and argue that Maine lobstermen have probably put in more effort, more time, and more money than any group in this country to protect right whales. I started lobstering when I was a kid. I started protecting right whales when I was in high school as part of this fishery. When I was a senior in high school, spring of my senior year, I remember spending my last $100 down the road at Hamilton Marine on whale-safe gear so I could go fishing that summer. Since then, our industry has done everything from replacing our floating rope with sinking rope, putting weak links into our end lines, and then putting new and different weak links into our end lines. We have reduced the number of end lines in the water, and in the process, as Senator King just said, removed over 30,000 miles of rope from the Gulf of Maine. We mark all our gear so that in the unlikely event of an entanglement, we know exactly where that entanglement occurred. And most recently, we closed 967 square miles of the Gulf of Maine to fishing during very, very productive times of year. That's a lot of effort, but the take-home message there is all this effort has worked. If there are two numbers you go home with and remember today, remember 0 and 0. 0 documented entanglements of a right whale in Maine lobster gear since 2004, and 0 documented mortalities of a right whale in Maine lobster gear ever. So given this, you would think this assessment by Seafood Watch would take all of that into account because the commissioner, the governor, the senator, Luke, Steve, myself, and many others have had 4 years of conversations with this Seafood Watch group. You would think they would take all of that information and give us a score of 5 out of 5 on criterion 3, which is management effectiveness. You want to guess what we got? We got a 1 out of 5, the lowest score possible. All of that information fell on deaf ears at Seafood Watch. All of that information has fallen on deaf ears at the National Marine Fisheries Service. All of that information fell on deaf ears with Judge Boasberg and his awful decision yesterday. So, make no mistake about it, our future as an industry is at stake. The future of my wife, who is here today, and our 2 children is at stake. The future of coastal communities from Kittery to Cutler is at stake. The future of Maine's tax base is at stake. And the future of our country's most iconic and sustainable fishery is at stake. When you leave here today and have discussions about this issue, please, please spread the word and remember those 2 numbers, 0 and 0. Thank you very much.
Good job.
I want to ask Luke Holden, who is a guy who has built a nationwide, indeed a worldwide business based upon the lobster fishery, to talk about a little bit about what this really means. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is not an academic exercise here. This is life or death for the livelihoods of thousands of Maine people. And Luke can tell you what it's taken to build his business and what this actually means in the real world. Luke?
Thank you all for being here today. This is a very important moment for Maine lobster. My name is Luke Holden, and I am the founder and CEO of Luke's Lobster. I was born into this amazing industry. My father, Jeff Holden, was the first licensed lobster processor here in the state of Maine. For the last 13 years leading Luke's, and really for my entire life, I've been working to build the reputation and marketability of Maine lobster. Monterey Bay Aquarium / Seafood Watch red listing of the fishery is negligent in the face of the work of my teammates and all the men and women that work to support the fishery. In August of 2020, when Monterey Bay Aquarium was first rumored to red list the fishery, I organized a meeting with the team along with Senator Collins, Senator King, Governor Mills, Representative Pingree, Representative Golden, Commissioner Kelleher, Patrice McCarron from the Maine Lobsterman Association, the CEO of Red Lobster, the leadership team from Whole Foods, Kurt Brown from Reedy Seafood, and my team. It was remarkable how our elected officials showed up, how well educated they are on the topic, and how passionate they were for standing up for what's right. On the opposite end, it was remarkable how unprepared, dispassionate, and disassociated the Monterey Bay Aquarium team was. I believe everybody deserves the benefit of the doubt, and so we formed a working group to make sure the Monterey Bay team had access to all the information we industry leaders had access to. Through the communication process with the Monterey Bay team, it was clear that they were not interested in the specific facts of our fishery and that their minds were made up and aligned with the demands of their funders. One specific example was the scientific data that we shared around there being no whale habitat along the Maine coast within the exemption line, which is the scientific consensus of federal authorities. When Monterey Bay responded that they had no interest or time to look at that data, to me that was a clear marker that they were not interested in the facts. Of Maine lobster rope, more than 70% is within the exemption line, and the remaining 30%, Maine lobstermen have removed all floating rope, trawled up twice to dramatically cut the amount of vertical rope in the water, added weak links to ensure rope will break on the rare chance of whale encounter, and added seasonal closures, costly seasonal closures. It's no coincidence that no whales have been found with Maine gear on them since 2004, and it's no coincidence that no serious injury or death has ever been attributable to Maine gear. All of this delegation is support, and it's truly appreciated. But I think the real call to action here is to call out the reckless disregard for science and specificity in the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch program, and ensure that buyers and consumers don't consider it when purchasing seafood. Monterey Bay is an impartial, uncredible organization. They do not recognize progress when progress is being made, and their bazooka approach to evaluating the sustainability of the fisheries puts Maine lobster in the same category as fisheries that have no management plan, uses slave labor to be dramatic, and fraudulently mislabeled seafood, and that is just wrong. Judgments of sustainability need to be made on the basis of specific locations, regulations, and fishing methods. Maine lobster is a shining example of sustainability, not just for our target species, but the entire ecosystem. Again, thanks for your time today. This is an exceptionally important issue, and we hope you're vocal about it and supportive of our efforts.
Thanks, Luke.
One other fact that I think you may find interesting that the Seafood Watch stumbled over the truth in one place. The Maine lobster fishery is the most valuable single fishery in the United States. The single most valuable fishery in the United States is the Maine lobster fishery. And again, what they're doing is trying to shut it down. Let's be clear. They're trying to shut it down. I want to call Steve Train, who I first met when I was campaigning for governor, and he was on a boat on Long Island. We talked on the radio back and forth. And he's a longtime lobsterman in Casco Bay. And Steve, just give us a few words, please.
Thank you. It's been a lot of figures put out, and I don't need to put them back out. One I'm going to repeat, zero. Zero mortalities. There has never been a mortally injured whale caused by Maine gear. But a figure I want to give you, and this should resonate no matter what state you live in. The lobster industry directly employs about 12 to 15,000 people. Indirectly, you can triple that. But let's deal with directly. 12,000 people, that's 12,000 families. We've got some group in California wants to tell those 12,000 families, we're going to put you out of business. That's from one end of the state to the other. And it makes no sense to me. They generally tell you what is sustainably harvested so that you can eat it and feel good about it. There is no more sustainable seafood in this country than the Maine lobster. I honestly believe this is nothing more than a grab for publicity by a non-relevant NGO. They're looking for relevance, and they found an iconic symbol to attack, and we're giving them the press. But how do we not? How do we let them get away with it? I've been lobstering in my own boat since 1989. I started in a skiff in the 70s. I went in the stern of other boats. I've fished inshore and offshore. I have never in my life seen a right whale.
Okay, we can take some questions if you have some. Sir, you're going to come up. I can't hear you.
I'll project a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit more about not only what the delegation is doing, as well as yourself, County Governor, if they do not take lobster off of that list, what options are available?
Well, the first step is to give them a chance to do the right thing, and that's what we did when we sent them the letter that went out to them yesterday. So I don't really want to speculate about what comes next. I think the case is so clear that they may reconsider, and they should. We wrote to the board. Those are the people that are making decisions. I'm not sure they knew what was being done in their name. They do now, and so we're going to wait and see what response we get. The letter, the last paragraph of the letter says, every day that this goes by, it's harming Maine people. So we want a prompt reply, and we'll let you know. Yes, ma'am.
Judge Bozeman said the data has been refuted by a peer review. Not respect that.
Well, let's talk about that decision. It's important. This was a decision of a motion to appeal the decision of the agency. This has nothing to do with Seafood Watch. This is the Lobsterman and other people appealed the decision of the National Marine Fisheries Service. The standard for review in a case like that is the decision of the agency stands unless the plaintiff, in this case the lobsterman, can prove that it was arbitrary and capricious. That's a practically impossible standard. And I believe that there's a vast difference between arbitrary and capricious and good policy. The judge didn't say this was necessarily good policy. There may be 10 different ways to take care of this problem. All he said was that the decision was not arbitrary and capricious. So I don't consider this a major setback. It's just that it's not surprising, frankly. I don't know if I can ever remember somebody winning an appeal from an administrative agency because of the Chevron deference principle.
He also, throughout the opinion, he talks about the uncertainty of the data. In other words, the lack of data is considered to be substantive data, which it's not. And again, there's no balancing in this decision. There's no real recognition of the important economic impact, the social impact of the rule and the buy-up on Maine families and the Maine economy. That's what's lacking in this decision as well. But
Well,
Commissioner Kelleher.
Patrick,
I just want to comment on
this is Patrick Kelleher, Commissioner of Marine Resources.
I want to comment on the peer-reviewed piece of this data. That is the decision support tool that you're referencing. That decision support tool has been modified so many times that it is now no longer peer-reviewed, and they have to send it back out to peer review. They've also denied the state of Maine access to the decision support tool so we can run our own assessments. The federal government is blocking us from that, right? So they've now admitted they have to send it back out to peer review to have an independent review look at that tool to determine whether it's right or not. They shifted from a 60+% risk reduction that we received, changed it, and now we're somewhere less than 50% based on something that has not been peer reviewed. It's BS.
Commissioner Kelleher, while you're there, I just got a response other things, they said one of the remedies is to implement their roadmap for ropeless fishing gear. How
Yeah.
realistic is that to implement industry-wide in the short term?
We just sent NOAA a letter yesterday in the roadmap to ropeless. We were very critical. It is a very high-level, unsustainable approach in the short term to figure out how we're going to solve this problem.
Steve, you're going to do ropeless?
Yeah.
You want to do ropeless?
I equate it to parking your car in the mall parking lot at Christmas with your windows blacked out.
Yeah.
You have no idea where anyone else's gear is.
Yeah. Ropeless is going to be part of the solution, but it's years away. As Steve said, you need to understand where that gear is, where other people's gear is. The Maine Marine Patrol needs to be able to continue to monitor gear to check for compliance, to protect the lobster resource, but the federal agency is totally ignoring that part of the equation.
And have you been able to, two more questions, two questions. Follow-up, have you been able to calculate the immediate revenue impact if the business partners of Squash, HelloFresh, Blue Apron, Whole Foods do in fact pull out?
It's impossible to predict that now, but it's going to be devastating. I mean, it only took 2 days for 2 major retailers to pull out. We're waiting for the other shoe to fall from a number of other retailers because there are a lot of retailers that pay attention to this. Luke, you want to?
Or you can call those retailers that you shop at, those restaurants you might go to anywhere in this country and say, you keep Maine lobster on the menu and in your store.
Now look ahead, do you anticipate a moment where there's a coming together of all these different stakeholders and in a more, standard set of data that's collected and more evidence that's found from the ocean out there to figure this all out?
Well, that's all we want. I mean, I should have said at the beginning, all of us are committed to saving the right whale. That's not the issue. The question is doing something that's effective to save the right whale, not dismissing the efforts that have been made, and not taking an action in the interim that is so destructive. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. You haven't asked the question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Someone asked me this morning, does this outfit get federal funding? And I don't know, but I'm going to find that out, because I don't know why the taxpayers of Maine or the taxpayers of any place should be funding an agency that is this irresponsible and arrogant and thoughtless and heedless of the results of their actions. So that's something I intend to do. I've already started that research, so we'll see where that goes. But I can't justify the people of Maine paying these guys salaries out there in California.
Phil, last question. Governor, there's remarkable unity here. Democrats, Republicans, independents, office holders, challengers. You seem to all be on the same side here. The Republicans are pointing to contributions you've received from the League of Conservation Voters and Maine Conservation Voters who have advocated for these kinds of lobster restrictions, and they say that the Maine Conservation Voters share board members with the Conservation Law Foundation, which brought this lawsuit. Do you see any contradiction there?
Apples and oranges, Phil. We are united in this effort. We are united in saving the Maine lobster industry for all good, objective reasons. We should be united. This isn't about politics, and no politician should be interfering and saying this is a Republican thing or a Democratic thing or an independent thing. This is a unified front here. The people who brought the lawsuit are not associated with me in any way.
Thank you all very much. Great to see you.
You got to get an escort to the airport now?
I don't know if he'll be blue light, but he'll get me there on time.
Well, if it was Joe, he'd use them anyway.
Exactly.
Was it George she brought down and took him? No, you.
Troy, thank you, and so are you.
What do you want? Anybody? He's got a lot of great down there.